All right. Let's get Facebook in here. I do not have the ability to add Instagram myself. I've tried. I think there's a password or something. So, Instagram maybe it'll go up sometime, but we'll figure it out. But welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. It's Tuesday evening. I am Nick Kendell, joined by Carl Dumler, and it is my fault that we're late today. I got stuck in traffic having to pick up the little guy, and the route I normally take was torn up to heck, and they had like the single lane one at a time going on. So that put me back a good bit. So is what it is, but we're here and better late than never. How you doing, Carl?
I'm doing good. I remember my Seattle days trying to get my wife downtown on we stopped taking I-5 because it was terrible. Does it still get down to like single lane at one point when you get closer to the downtown exit, or they've worked on that?
They've worked on it. My issue is that I live kind of on the east side of North Seattle, and I have to cut across every single lane of traffic between one exit to go from my on-ramp to the off-ramp for daycare. And it's the same exact thing from leaving work to get to daycare. So I am like within one exit, I have to cut across 6 lanes of interstate traffic in rush hour both ways. So it's man, I haven't been hit yet, but sometimes I'm like, I'm coming. My hands up. Yeah. I'm pointing at you. I'm driving a little Prius. Of course I am. I'm like, my signal's on. Let's please don't hit me. I will cry. But we've avoided accidents so far.
Is it Family Guy that does the whole like?
Yeah.
Lady cutting across 6 lanes.
But I'm using turn signal.
Good luck, everybody.
Yeah, no. That's not me. But I have to cut across quickly. And I will say, sometimes when it's like no cars there, I am cutting across the interstate, multiple lanes, way faster than anybody should. But we're here. We're alive, and we made it. Only 20 minutes late. We'll give you guys another maybe 10 minutes added on, as long as my wife doesn't start banging on the ground above me here. But we're going to talk some mock drafts today. We got some big hitters coming out. There must have been a note going around, or I don't know. They're all conspiring. Who knows? But we got Daniel Jeremiah. The NFL Network does a really good job. And, of course, Mel Kiper, the Godfather. The reason that the NFL draft, the NFL and ESPN owes Kiper so much for what he's done. You say what you will about his, takes. You can disagree with them, live with, hate him, whatever. He's an entertainer, and he puts in the work, and a pioneer in the industry. So any thoughts on those two, Carl, before we get into it?
Yeah, you and I both, like I said, we owe a lot to those guys that kind of brought this to the national focus. It kind of used to be where draft was pretty much nothing. You didn't know until the next season who your team might have even drafted. Mm-hmm. And to make it what it is today, where like we get to do our shows like we do. This started because of yours and my love of draft and wanting to talk about how to build a team together. And so, yeah, it's incredible to see what it's become. And now we got these heavy hitters. And like I said, to see them make a change like they did today on a few players, you got to think something happened. It's not just free agency happening and, moving a few players. It's actually seen them go from like, hey, pick 10 to pick 20. That's a decent drop off for a talented player. So definitely take notice of that. Probably means they've heard from a few NFL teams on some things, especially Kiper. Like a lot of times anymore, his mock drafts are based on things he's hearing, maybe not so much about his watching of players, and that's part of what he's done is he's built it up to that kind of point. So it'll be fun to talk about this. We haven't really got to talk a ton of draft yet so far this year.
Wow. Yeah. Not too much. We've run a couple mocks and stuff, but it's fun to have all these things released today to get into it. And also Joel Klatt's released on Friday as well, and somebody that Broncos have not been mocked very much, and free agency changes. And one thing I always enjoy about Mel Kiper, he said it a few times this draft cycle, is that the combine will happen, Senior Bowl will happen, free agency will happen. They'll have another mock draft before that as well, and then the actual draft comes, and their mock draft 1.0 is closer to reality than all the hoopla and everything they fed. The further we get away from the on the field tape analysis, the more narratives can come into play, starting to fixate on non-football things. So I would make sure that people aren't getting too hyped up about whether it's fun still, it's entertainment. But again, it's more about ruling guys out than elevating guys, if they're not good enough, if your arm length isn't good enough, if you're too slow, rather than a guy running so fast that you rocket him up the board. That's not typically, I would warn against that. But let's say hello to some folks coming in here. No warnings with this guy. David Mickelrath coming in says, good evening, Broncos country. Let's go, Bo. Let's go, David. Hope you're doing well. Happy belated birthday. Once again, you're probably a week older there on that one, but I did want to make sure that we said that with you in here. We got Ernie Mays in the house. Says, go Broncos country only. Go Bo Nix for 6. Absolutely, Ernie. Chase Wellner, BTB with the fist bump. Good to see you. We got I'm the Man coming in saying it. Let's go Peyton and Pat Peyton paying off so far in free agency. Good work in the draft and keep building. Yeah, this is going to be a fun draft. I'm excited. I wish the Broncos had a few more picks to play with all the same, but you essentially have a full hand. And my biggest complaint is I just don't think it's not the overly flashy draft. Not the best at wide receiver, not a lot of offensive tackles at the top. You probably only have like 2 true blue chippers at the very top as well. And not a lot of quarterback. I mean, but there's meat and potatoes. There's a lot of fun still to be had. So what do you think, Carl?
Yeah, it's not the most exciting draft for especially the first round. But for me, because you and I love day 2 and day 3 of the draft, I think that's the meat of this whole group. And there's a lot of really, really good players that I think could be game changers for your team. So I love this draft. But like I said, maybe at the top, there's not quite those household names that you already know, like a Marvin Harrison Jr. There's not quite that kind of prospect per se. You got Abdul Carter, you got Travis Hunter, of course, but beyond a few of those kind of names, there's just not much at the top here.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I see Hal and Jake in here. Sorry, I was the tardy one today. I got work downtown and I got to beat traffic and pick up the little guys. So sometimes life happens, but we go live when we go live, and that's why you want to subscribe and share, because that way you get the notification when we go live as well. Appreciate you guys coming. We got Paul in the house. Good evening. Great to see you. Mike asks, what the earliest you take James Pierce Jr.? James Pierce Jr. talent-wise is worth the 20th overall selection. He is very, very fluid player, got good bend, not going to set the edge or anything, but he's, does his best there for his frame. He's very comparable to Brian Burns, who got paid. I mean, first-round picks trading for him. That's a similar player. But, and this is purely hearsay. I want to preface this with that. But coming out of the combine, it sounds like there was a lot of people not enthused with the interviews, with what they heard about him from teammates, blah, blah, blah. So there's issues there, perceived issues. I mean, again, I don't know the guy. I don't have a freaking PI firm to figure out what these kids, their favorite lunch milk back in 3rd grade, like these teams do, or whatever the heck they can find out. They talk to their math teachers back then about some incident. It's crazy how deep they go into these players' characters and backgrounds, which, when you're investing millions upon millions into these guys, faces the franchise, and winning is so important. I get it, but it's crazy. So what's the earliest you'd take James Pierce? I think he's an option at 20, but with the off the field stuff that's been talked about, just concerns about that, you're probably talking 40 to 50, I think, probably for Denver. But again, he's just a weird one. James Pierce Jr., Mike Green, Walter Nolan. You can not just pulling that out of thin air. I can attribute it to somebody a little bit more connected than me. Dane Brugler talked about that leading up to the NFL draft. Those are 3 that character concerns abound.
Yeah, I think the James Pierce one, I think you can trust that that's true just by the way that Tennessee handled him this year. Like, he was kind of a part-time player. There's times that they didn't always trust him on the field. And maybe that's because he's a little bit undersized. Like I said, didn't always do the best job setting the edge. But even there, like, we've seen undersized guys at the college level still be able to hold up the edge because they put in the work, they learn the technique. And I just feel like my biggest thing with him, a couple years ago, we were talking about him being a top 5 pick. Like, watch out for this guy. He's got that kind of skill set. But he's pretty much been the exact same player since then. The fact that we didn't see that growth level that you like to see over a few year period, and that happens sometimes where you have this overly athletic player that comes into the college game and they live off of it and they just don't put in the work to make their game better. That's what I feel like James Pierce is. He's very talented. Don't get me wrong. And if he would ever take to coaching, if he would really buy into a program, he could be that guy that just really everybody's going, oh, why didn't we take him higher? Why wasn't he a top 10 pick?
The one thing I'll push back on about James Pierce Jr. and the playing reps is that they did that with everybody on that Tennessee line. It didn't matter. They were 10, 12 deep, and they rotated very, very, very heavily. So I don't think that there's a story there. But coming out of combine and everything, a lot of people in the know are tossing that out there. So we're just, keeping an ear on it. And if he falls, that's something to keep an eye on. Michael Ronquillo, good evening, Nick and Carl. I'm building the Broncos. Go Bo Broncos. Go Michael Ronquillo. Appreciate you. Hope you're doing well out there in Tucson. I'm sure you're excited about the guy we're going to talk about here in a second. We got Pearl in the house. David Carmelo says, Albright implied that in a deal world, the Broncos get Omarion Hampton at 20 and Mason Taylor round 2. I think Kenneth Grant at 20 and Taylor round 2 at DJ Giddens in the third would be even more ideal. What do you think? I think all those are viable options. I probably would lean getting Kenneth Grant over Hampton just because a athletic specimen on the interior defensive line is a little bit more of a rare commodity to the running back, especially with a running back class that's probably the most deep in talent since 2008 when we had 5 running backs go in the first round, Carl. And also day 2, you still had Jamal Charles and Matt Forte get drafted in that class. So that was 2008 was a heck of a running back year. But they're all viable. I'm not ready to pin myself down on any player yet. I'm starting to get Shamar Stewart pilled. Of course I am. The freaky best athlete in the class, edge rusher, of course. But both viable options. David Carmelo, see you Monday, Nick. Yeah, we're going to talk some ball on Monday as well. So great to see you. Clayton, good to see you. I said smash that like button on the way in. Appreciate you. We got our guy Patrick, aloha, BTB draft. We're going to get into it, of course. Daniel Berry in here. Great to see you. Our guy Phil McLaughlin saying good evening. So I was reading the Raiders and Broncos are in the selection process to play the Colts in Berlin this year. Do you know when the decision will be made? Carl, any idea? I have no idea. That's something that's just like when it happens, roll over me. That's great.
I'm trying to remember when they start doing, I feel like it's sometime May, June when things have really died down. The NFL is still trying to drum up interest into the NFL. I think that's when they start talking a little bit of the setting the schedule, who's going to be where. And a lot of times, especially those international games, they love to do those like one at a time and just kind of, hey, sprinkle it in. Broncos going with the Colts to Berlin. And then like 2 days later is when they'll release the full schedule. So like I said, sometime this spring, early summer, I think that's probably when I would expect to know about it.
Yeah, and regardless, I think, Broncos going over there to play the Colts with what the Broncos have done, beating them last year. I think Denver will not be an underdog in that matchup.
Yeah, and speaking of underdog, nothing beats March basketball. Oh my goodness, I can't believe that it is here. Bring the fun of a bracket to every game day by making entries on Underdog. Underdog is one of the leading sports apps, and you can play now in your state. Do you want to win up to 1,000 times your money? You can with Underdog.
To play, choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, such as points, assists, rebounds, and more. Underdog's got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all basketball picks or mix and match across other sports as well. You can play with as little as $1, and if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into $1,000 just with your hoops knowledge.
Download the Underdog app and sign up now using the promo code MHuddle to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with the promo code MHuddle. Claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon first deposit.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado. For some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Appreciate them. Make sure you guys check out Underdog. Thank you, Phil, for the super chat as well. You guys are killing it. I see we got a Tennessee fan in here. You should check out my latest mock. I didn't have the Broncos going with JPJ in that first round there, but I did have them going Omar Norman Lott and Dylan Sampson. So two Tennessee guys. They got talent for sure. So some fun players, no doubt. And yeah, we got Doug coming in says he just wants the BPA. Yeah, BPA is relative. It's going to be fun to see what the Broncos can do with their spot, but it does seem to be Omarion Hampton Day on Broncos Twitter. For a while, it was, oh my God, Tyler Warren, shiny object. Colston Loveland, Joker, shiny object. Well, they're both gone. We got Evan Ingram. Ashton Genty is going to be gone. Omarion Hampton, viable option for the Broncos. One of many right now. But in Daniel Jeremiah's mock, just released today, he does have the Broncos going with Omarion Hampton, running back out of North Carolina. He tested extremely well at the NFL Combine, has had 2 really good seasons down there in for the North Carolina Tar Heels. Complete back, not going to be a flex him out and confuse you for a wide receiver in the pass game, but angle routes, check downs, he can do enough in the pass game. He's by no means cement hands out there, and really just a well-built, just prototype running back build. I do kind of have Adrian Peterson in my head, so maybe sometimes I like him even a little bigger. Not Derrick Henry big, but like AP. But he's not AP, but like 5'11", 220 pounds, tested and ran and jumped really well. I think he didn't do well in the agilities, but he only did one of them too. I don't really, whatever. But really good back, very much in play for the Broncos at 20.
Yeah, I think a couple things really stood out to me with him. The ability to turn a negative play into a positive play was something that just, I think of last year. There was just so many plays the Broncos had runs go for 0 or negative yards. And it wasn't always the offensive line's fault. Sometimes it's just running back just not doing what they should have been doing. But when I see a running back that can actually do something beyond what the play's blocked for, like that sticks out to me. That adds value. You're not just getting what the play's blocked for. And so I think it was 45% of his runs he was hit at or touched at the line of scrimmage or behind it. And yet he turned it into, I think, the second most positive yards per carry in the last decade, I think is the stat that's out there for him. So just shows this guy's falling forward. He's going to get you, if it's 3 yards, he's probably getting you 6. That's the kind of guy he is. Now, he doesn't have the most wiggle. So you get him to the open field, he might not be able to make that play where he makes that last guy miss to really turn it into a home run. But he has many times he is getting to that second level that we just didn't get to see last year. He is a bowling ball that wants to go hit somebody. And so it is. It's really fun to watch him play. It'd be really fun to have him here in this Denver offense. And, just make teams, you want to play a lighter box because the Broncos are spreading you out. Good luck with that. Him against a lighter linebacker, I take him winning that battle most of the time. And so, yeah, I really like him. And like I said, he's not the biggest slouch in the pass game either. He can do parts of that. You're probably still going to want to pair him with somebody that can do more in that area just because of the Sean Payton offense and what he wants to do with the running back. But you cannot just know you're going to run the football just because he's on the field. That's the nice thing. And he's pretty good at pass blocking too. That's another underrated part of his game. He's got the size. He's got the want to of going up there and knocking the snot out of him. He'll do that for you. So yeah. If the Broncos take him at 20, I completely understand it. It is the biggest need left on your team right now other than punter. And you're not taking a punter at 20. But no, it is. It's a huge need. I think it's good value. I think that's probably about where I would have him ranked, is around 20, 25 when I'm looking at my finished big board when I get done with it. But my one issue, like I said, there's a lot of people who've gotten really locked into that idea now. If we get the running back, it means that our offense is complete and we can go and win a Super Bowl if we get the running back. I don't think that's quite the case. I still think there's a couple other pieces missing. You still need to add to your defense. Like I said, defensive line. There's 3 guys that are up for contract after this year. Plus, you just got to add to that rotation. I don't want to see Zach Allen having, 85% of the snaps this last year?
Something insane. Yeah.
85, 90%, somewhere in there. Like, a guy should not be doing that. You cannot expect him to sustain that for many years. I know a lot of people are talking about getting him a long-term contract. If your plan is to play him 90% of plays, I'm probably not signing him to a long-term contract because I'm not thinking he's going to be able to make it in that contract. So, but no, like I said, I do love Hampton. If that's your pick, all the more I'm for it. I just think you can't get locked into that because there's a lot of other really good players that can help this team now and for the future.
Yeah. And my big concern with Hampton is that, so what is the nitpicking against him here? What keeps him from being a superstar, top 10 guy? Why don't I have him ranked up with Genty? I don't think he's as creative as a runner in the open field. I don't think that he's just going to try to run through guys much more. And he can do that from time to time, but I'd like to see a little bit just more like you watch somebody like Alvin Kamara run and it looks like, he's like a figure skater where other people are like chasing him like he's a robber, like cops trying to get him or something. I don't know, but they just like can't get their hands on him. I always call another Family Guy reference, greased up deaf guy. Don't always see that with Hampton out there. I don't think he's overly creative in the open field that way, which is fine. I also don't think he's got that fifth gear. Like he tested really well and he can hit you doubles and triples, but he's not going to, run away from guys. I don't see the explosive element to the same extent with Hampton, despite his testing. It just does not, you don't see him running away and changing angles and bending around that line. Like some guys like Henderson can, Genty can, Dylan Sampson can as well. Those guys who are more home run hitters in the run game specifically. Biggest issue with Hampton though, vision is really hit or miss. A lot of times I feel like he's just trying to press the line, get downhill regardless, and doesn't really have that patience, that throttle at the line of scrimmage, and he can miss holes developing. A lot of people I respect have mentioned that they feel like he's a much better fit in a zone-oriented scheme versus a gap with that, because you can just kind of read the line and flow with the line versus multiple gaps opening and pick which one is there. So we'll see about that going forward. But yeah, the vision, it's the easy, and it seems like it's a stupid comp, but like, there's the Javonte Williams aspect where Javonte Williams was awesome coming out of college because he could break so many tackles. He was so physical. Injuries zapped him, and the vision never came up after the tackle breaking lost. We're not going to be drafting guys like, oh, what if all of a sudden he has a catastrophic injury and he's not the same player? Okay, well, that could happen to anybody. So that's not how we're playing. But the vision is a concern with Hampton that does keep him from lapping Genty for me. And I think he's closer to Henderson and Judkins than he is Genty in my eyes, although there are people who would disagree with that and have him up there with Genty as opposed to those two Ohio State guys.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to this. Let's get to some more of these comments in here because we got a lot of people and some great conversations going on in the chat. Keep it coming, guys. Really appreciate it. And so let's see. Who do we got coming up here? We got Mr. Rocket with the $4.99 super saying, I know this isn't an ideal way to think, but man, I really hope Denver doesn't draft a running back or tight end in the first. I really want, I think it's Mbuka or a defensive lineman at 20. That's it. Yeah, like I said, I can see a lot of different directions. That's a nice thing that the Broncos have set up where they don't have to get locked into a certain spot. You kind of felt before they got Ingram, they were almost kind of getting stuck into that tight end spot. Every mock draft you saw out there, Loveland, just because it was such a glaring red light going off, going, man, the Broncos have nothing at tight end. I think it was Andrew Mason put out there, like, what is the top tight end for the Broncos done every year for the last 8 years? It's not pretty. You've got maybe a little bit from Noah Fant. He had a couple of decent years there for you, but even there, it was not great. So now you got that position taken care of. So you can go a lot of different directions. There's even some secondary guys. I would not mind if the Broncos decide, hey, let's invest in this. We want to keep that group really, really strong. Your top three corners are pretty darn good. But we saw last year when Surtain went down for a game, that defense struggled big time. When Riley Moss went down for about 4 or 5 games, and even when he came back, he wasn't quite the same player. That defense completely changed. And so beyond those guys, and like I said, you can't always draft for injuries, but you still like to be able to have rotation, and you can still find ways with some of these guys. You can move them around. McMillan, is he going to be here long-term, or is this his last year? So you're going to have to be trying to figure out if you can replace him. Like I said, wide receiver, we're going to talk about a couple of them today. And that's another position. I know Sean Payton has said we really like our young guys. But if you can find a guy you really think can elevate this offense, you don't pass on that. Even if you like Vele, even if you like Troy Franklin, you could still find big time upgrades. And with how big the wide receiver market is right now, a guy just got paid what, $41 million a year?
I think 40.1.
40.1.
So that way
Okay.
reset. Yeah.
But anyway, it's still that's crazy money going out there. So keeping that room pretty cheap, inexpensive, getting a wide receiver that you can build with Bo Nix to have be his guy. Like you got a Jamar Chase going with Joe Burrow. You've got Jalen Hurts. He's had his guys here. They drafted some wide receivers to help him or traded for one too. You think about Patrick Mahomes. He came in. He had Tyreek Hill to kind of help him out. You get in trouble. It's nice to have that number one wide receiver that you can trust that will go make a play for you. So I definitely wouldn't mind the Broncos going in any of those kind of directions. I don't think you have to get locked into has to be a running back, has to be a tight end.
Yeah, it could be an edge rusher, could be a linebacker, safety. I mean, there's just got a lot of options for this Broncos team. It is tilted offensive weapon or defensive lineman, all the same, but I'm not against. It does feel like there's like more risk involved with running back or tight end and linebacker, but still, Denver's got a chance. Yeah, I don't think they should be laser focused on anybody. You got to let the board come to you. Denver is fortunately not picking so high now, so just how many options, how the board can fall is that much more erratic. So we'll just see how it plays out. Chad coming in here, boss man, says 9 years of building the Broncos. Gosh, man, that's a good number, but also it's a terrible number because how time has flied. Gosh darn, man. Oh, we're getting old. I remember doing it on I literally had a Mac computer that I was recording those on like the bed in my 1-bedroom apartment, Carl, and like I had duct tape holding, poor college student, duct tape holding that Mac together. Gosh. And then editing those afterwards. The live stream is much more enjoyable with hanging out with all you guys. But thanks, Chad, so much. This is a big super chat coming in here. Yeah, great run. And the Scouts Eye preview, man, those are taking me back. Those took a lot of work working on those Google Docs to work on those episodes.
Oh, man. Yeah, I remember I was on vacation one time and we had a show that we were doing while I was on vacation. And I told my wife, I'm like, hey, I've got to go to a coffee shop. I got to write the notes for the show. And I think I had 8 pages of notes that we were going to be going through, dissecting different players. It was crazy to think about how we began, and appreciate Chad always giving us this chance all those years ago, and to see what it has become today. And now with all of you getting these live shows, getting the chance to talk with you guys, that was kind of always the thing. We're like, it's great that we get to do these shows, but we don't get any kind of feedback so much per se, live from anybody. So like I said, appreciate all of you guys being here, being with us through this entire ride. It's been one heck of a ride. So you guys are the best. And Chad, thank you again, boss man. Good to have you here today, helping us out.
Do you remember the marathon bowl game preview show that we did that was like 2.5 hours? It just wouldn't end. That was, my gosh. I think I'm still recording or editing that one. That was unbelievable.
We were texting each other under our tables as we're recording the show.
We got to wrap this
up. What are we doing?
We gotta go. Man, what a day. David Carmella says DJ wrote his mock today not to sleep on the Cowboys at 12 as a landing spot for Omarion Hampton. Would be a typical Jerry pick. Yeah, I mean, he's a good back and he could go 12 and I would understand that. He could go 10 to the Bears. I feel like there's 6 players that I'm pretty confident won't be there at 20 for the Broncos, and Ward, Carter, Graham, Campbell, Hunter, Membow. Is that 5, 6? I don't know, but those guys won't be there. After that, though, Ted McMillan, Kenneth Grant, Colson Loveland, Tyler Warren, Ashton Genty, Marion Hampton. Who knows? There's some improbables, no doubt, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, the Cowboys, they make sense. It makes sense. I don't know if their offensive line is as constructed to take advantage of Hampton day one. That's like one thing. I don't know who's been, but running backs, your running game is only ever as good as your offensive line, right? Your offensive line has to be built to take advantage of that. And a running back is like, not to be a chemist nerd here for a second, but it's kind of like a catalyst for your offensive efficiency. Like if your offensive line is good, you have to like have so much energy to get the reaction to start. But if you have a good running back, you can lower that curve there. So
Yeah.
Man, we're getting real nerdy here. But I think Denver's in a position with the offensive line. They can take advantage of that. I don't know if the Cowboys are.
Just think about Saquon Barkley. Is he having a 2,000-yard rushing season with the Giants this year? No. One, they're playing from behind probably in a lot of those games. Two, they really didn't have the offensive line to take advantage of that. They didn't have the weapons to keep a defense spread out, guessing, hey, are we passing? Are we running? He didn't have the quarterback like he did there with Philly. So that was like the perfect system for him to go to. And then he's a great player on top of that. So like I said, it's not just all about just that one talented player. You've got to have something around them, which is the nice thing with the Broncos right now. Like, you've got a great offensive line. You've got a couple weapons that you can work with. You've got the quarterback. So yeah, you could go get a running back and feel pretty good that they're going to do some decent things here in Denver. We don't know exactly what their ceiling would be here in Denver yet. I still think the Broncos need one more wide receiver, tight end, something weapon to really unlock this offense beyond just the running back. That's just me being greedy. I want 5 guys that can go make an impact in the pass game that teams are going, oh, what do we do? Yeah. We just have to play zone coverage all game because there's no way we can line up man to man against these guys. That's kind of what I want to see. But I get a little greedy there. So Hampton, like I said, Cowboys, I could understand it just because Jerry wants to make that impact where it's the player that gets people excited. You take an offensive lineman, people are like, okay. But, it doesn't quite move the needle like a player like a running back, wide receiver, quarterback that you could go get, or a pass rusher.
Yeah, I mean, get a good player at the end of the day. That's what it's all about. And that's hopefully Omarion Hampton can be that guy. We will see, of course. But we also got Mel Kiper's mock coming up where he's got the Broncos going with wide receiver Tedarro McMillan out of Arizona, who a lot of people have been mocking in the top, 4 to 12. And as of late, I mean, coming out of the combine, people talking to their connections in the league, blah, blah, blah. Tedarro McMillan sliding a little bit, and he falls all the way to the Broncos at 20. Catch here is that Hampton, Genty, Warren, and Loveland were all off the board by the time the Broncos were picking. So Kiper goes with McMillan, first wide receiver off the board at 20, which is wild considering what the wide receiver market is like on the open market. He says the Broncos can focus on another hole on offense around quarterback Bo Nix, a wide receiver. McMillan would give Nix a sure-handed jump ball artist who uses his great body control and physicality to make tough catches. He broke 1,300 receiving yards in each of the past 2 seasons. Pairing him with Sutton and Evan Ingram would give opponents some game planning nightmares. So McMillan, I did a mock with him going to the Broncos. This last one, I think I did McMillan. I think I did McMillan, Omar Norman Lott. I can never get the name right. ONL and Dylan Sampson. And people are like, Tet won't be there. Tet won't be there. Well, Daniel Jeremiah had the Broncos passing on Tet McMillan. Maybe the Broncos will pass on Tet. Not a perfect prospect, no doubt, top 10 kind of guy. So, but I'd be happy with Tet. Makes a lot of sense for the Broncos. I think he can play that big slot position that Sean Payton has loved to utilize in his offense. Michael Thomas is a comparison I've seen thrown around with Tet, and I like a lot. He also gives you some long-term leverage with Cortland Sutton. Let's say Sutton's looking for $27 million a year. T just got 26. Let's say Sutton's looking for $27 million a year, entering age 30 season next year. I don't know if Denver wants to pay that for Cortland Sutton. So you have an option to move on from him for, 15% of the cost compared to Sutton, and give yourself other options. So Tet's a very viable option for the Broncos if he were to fall to 20.
So, yeah, and I've seen a few people dogging on him lately. I know Steve Smith Sr. had a show today where he did his wide receiver rankings, and he was really kind of not very high on him. Just saying he's not as impactful as you would like. And in some ways, he's right. He's not a perfect wide receiver prospect like a Jamar Chase when he was coming out, where you're looking at that, or last year with a couple of the guys, Malik Neighbors, Michael, I'm off some spacing on his name. I said it even earlier. But anyway, some of those players from last year, Harrison Jr.
Marvin.
Yeah, Marvin.
You said Michael. I'm like,
I know. That's why I knew I was wrong on that part. But yeah, some of those guys, you're looking at them going, oh man, look at their game. They've got the speed, they've got the size, they've got the route running, they've got everything. McMillan's not quite that. But I think he's in that next tier of players, and he's got a skill set. If you know how to use him, if you put him in the right offensive system, he can go do a lot of things for you. And I think, like you said, Sean Payton, he likes bigger wide receivers. He likes that they can use their size to maximize different areas of the field. He likes when they can attack the middle of the field. McMillan is great over the middle of the field. Mm-hmm. He's not just run it deep, throw it up high, and let him go catch it. That's not most of his game. Most of his catches came on hitch routes, came on quick in routes, slant routes. Those are very big parts of the Sean Payton offense. And he does a great job of using his body to get position. I think he does amazing work for his size at making guys miss in the open field. Something that caught my eye when I watched him earlier today. I watched every single pass attempt that went his direction today, just to kind of prepare for this show. And there's a lot of slant plays where he'd catch it, stop on a dime, turn, and catch the defender where they were not ready for him to turn like that. So he is a great player. I think he would be perfect in the system. Like I said, it gives you options with Sutton. Either you can move on, or like I said, you can have Sutton on one side, McMillan on the other. You got Ingram in the slot tight end spot. You're looking pretty darn good at that point, especially red zone. What do you do with that? You don't have the size on defense to match up with those guys one-on-one.
Yeah.
If Bo Nix sees any of those guys in a single man coverage situation, he's going to go throw it that direction and trust that his guy's going to go win. So I think he would be a great pick for the Broncos. I don't get why the NFL is as low as they are on him. I get he's not a 4.3 kind of speed guy. I get that he's a little bit skinnier than you like. Usually you like a little bit more weight, but I think he also has a decent frame that he can add some weight. I don't think that, sometimes you see those guys that are just so skinny that you're like, okay, that there's nothing there. I know some people might get mad at this, but like Tez Johnson, I don't think he's going to be able to get up to 180 pounds when he gets to the NFL. His body's just not built that way. He's going to be a 160-pound guy. Just like I said, that's who he is. I think T-Mac can actually add some weight and not lose his athleticism in the process.
Yeah. He's a fun player. He's not overly explosive. If you clocked in like 4.55 the pro day, I know there was a tweet yesterday from Jordan Schultz, 4.48. First one to tweet, and then later on from talking with people there, the scouts. I don't know about that. There's a reason that one got out there first, right, folks? But yeah, no, I see Michael Thomas. I don't think he's going to be for every team, but if you're looking for that big slot, it can do some dirty work stuff, that power slot as well. I mean, he can go out there and he can completely change what you had last year. I mean, and also you have to remember the Broncos went out last season. They had Cortland Sutton already, and they went out and paid Josh Reynolds. Like, oh, well, you have more size. Well, I don't know how much Sean Payton's already. You got your Mims for your manufactured deep shots. You got Franklin, who essentially needs a runway, kind of a nine route merchant for that. But there's a role there, all the same. So I'd be happy with Tet at 20. And I would be right now. I think I'd be pretty disappointed if the Broncos went with a running back over, not Ashton. I'd take Ashton Genty. I think first it'd be close, but if they took Hampton over Tet, I'd be a little bit bummed personally. At this point, Phil comes in and says, "What's the story on the punter Kroger? I see he was brought in for tryouts. Denver's looking for punters. They might trade for somebody. We'll see. No news on the signing yet, as far as I'm aware. But Denver, they have an obvious hole at punter. They've gone after a few guys and lost." Hopefully it's not something that comes back to bite him this year, but that's all the news I have there. Dennis Woods, whatever happened to Cam Scatterbo? Used to be talking about the top running backs, but he's not much anymore. Did he test poorly, hurt? First he got hit with a, what is it called? The guy surprises you and gives you papers. What's it called? The law. He's been served.
Served you? Yeah.
Yeah, he got served at the combine. Some former teammate sued him because he was driving a golf cart and got his teammate hurt. I think being sued for like $100,000 or something. That's something big. So I don't know if there's anything there. Scatterbo did not run. He jumped really well at the combine, but a lot of people think he might be like a 4.7 kind of guy, 4.6, which puts you more in like he's a good receiver. He runs really hard. He's got good vision, patience, really strong. Obviously explosive in the lower half, but not really fast. So I think he's somebody who's probably going to go 90 to 140 would be my guess. Still a guess. Would be a fine running back. I mean, if the Broncos took him at 85, I'd understand it. But there's just so many good running backs in this class, and I don't think there's been anything on him running he did not run the combine. I don't know when the Arizona Pro Day is. We'll keep an eye out for that, but I think there's concerns that he's maybe like Kareem Hunt, but like old Kareem Hunt who doesn't have the juice anymore, if that makes sense. And also he's had a good bit of fumbles, but he's a fine back. Some people have him as high as like running back 4 or 5 in this class. Some people have him like 8 or 9 or 10. It's a deep class. He'll go somewhere in like the top 120, and he's a viable option there.
Yeah, I really do like his vision. You were talking about that earlier with Hampton, that he's hit and miss in that area. Scatterbo, he's pretty darn good. He's pretty creative in his ability to see where the hole's going to open up. He's got great balance. There's a lot of plays where it looks like he should go down. He somehow stays up, keeps getting those extra yards. You're just going to have to, if the Broncos, especially since we're talking Broncos draft here, if you draft him, you better find somebody that has those extra gears to be a home run threat. Because like I said, he's going to hit a lot of singles for you. There's not going to be a lot of negative plays other than the fumbles, but there's not going to be a lot of turning a 5-yard run into a 15-yard run. There's not going to be a 15-yard run turned into a 40-yard run. There's just, because he's, talking about like get different gears. There's some of those running backs that can hit like 5th gear that are like running away from everybody else. You got those fourth gear guys, which I would kind of probably put Hampton in that area. He's a really good athlete, but he's not a great athlete in that sense of long speed. Scatterbo, you're talking 3rd gear. That's where he maxes out at. And it's not, I'm not trying to knock him or anything like that. It's just, like I said, he's a 4.7 kind of speed. You see that on tape. Even at Arizona State, there's a couple plays where he really broke it, but he couldn't go score the touchdown because everybody caught up to him. He just doesn't have that extra gear.
Yeah. So he's going to be a good back. He's going to need to be a committee. He's pretty good out of the backfield. I don't know if he's like so twitchy that, again, confusing you for a wide receiver in space. But again, somebody, like I said, what did I say? 90 to 140, 80 to 150. That kind of late day 2, early day 3 is what I'm expecting for him personally. We also got Camden says, "What's up, Broncos country? For the Broncos pick at 20, if they're interested in a wide receiver, which one fits more, McMillan, Burden, or Egbuka?" I mean, you'd have to ask Sean Payton. I think they could go with any single direction with that. Egbuka, if he actually runs a 4.3 like they're talking about, the way he blocks, the route running, I think he fits really well in that F or Z that they're looking for in this offense. McMillan can do a little bit of everything. Burden, I think, is a little bit overlapped with Mims as far as the manufactured touches, but gosh, I mean, he looks so good his sophomore season. He's built 20, 30 pounds more than Mims as well. So, I mean, he's electric, no doubt. Maybe a little bit less consistent down to down. Like if the ball's not going to him or he's supposed to be blocking, it's not the same level of juice out there. He seems to be slipping as well. I don't know if he went in the first round of either of those mock drafts, Daniel Jeremiah or Mel Kiper. So we'll see. But the last guy, I want to thank you, Camden, so much. Do you have any thoughts here, Carl? Because we got to wrap it up. I do want to talk the last one here.
Yeah. So just real quick, I would say it depends on what you think of your long-term goals. Buka, like I said, he could be a really good number 2, get you that 850, 900 yards, and he's going to be really consistent at doing that for you. He's also going to be great in helping in the run game, but I don't ever see him developing into a true number 1. McMillan, there's a much higher ceiling, but I think there's also a decent floor there for him. Burden, my biggest issue there, like I said, you've got to scheme up plays for him like you do with Mims. And I just worry if you plan on Mims being a part of your long-term plan, I don't see how you have Burden in that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So last pick here, we want to get to Joel Klatt, mocked for the Broncos, and he had them pass on Colson Loveland. I don't know if he had Hampton go in the first round at all. I don't see him here. Interesting. Yeah, I don't see him. So we'll see. But he had the Broncos going with wide receiver out of Texas. So another wide receiver, Matthew Golden, who had that unbelievable 40. I'm still a little bit not believing that because he does not play to that kind of speed. But really, he plays so much bigger than his size. He's a really good separator. I think if you're looking for like somebody who can like what you wanted Jerry Jeudy to be without like all the clips, but like the actual man separator with a little better ball skills, a little bit more physicality at the catch point, I can see Golden that way. Now he is slender. You're not going to ask him to be a power player. And like, if you want to run quick game or as far as like screens and ask Golden to block, that's not going to be your guy. But if you want to be running just ISO routes out there, I think he can be a really good player there. And again, for his size, it's really outstanding how physical he is and what his catch radius is. He comes up with balls that don't make sense when you see what his body type is. So he's a good player. Again, I tend to prefer, more built players because I want to be a bully out there. And he feels a little bit more finesse on the whole. But I really like Golden. Again, I don't think he's a 4-2 player on the field. He looks more like an upper 4-3 guy, but I like him a lot. And if the Broncos went that way, I'd be excited. I think I like Egbuka and Tet more than Golden. Maybe that's a hot take. I'm not as good at wide receiver as I am offensive line and defensive line, but that's where I sit. But he's an interesting option.
I worry he was a little bit hit and miss. He really came on strong at the end of the season. Then, like you said, had that great combine. But earlier in the season, I know he was getting used to a new quarterback, new system, all those kind of things. I just don't quite know what all he's going to be. There's just some missing pieces there for me with him because it is a little bit more limited compared to, like Ted McMillan. We've got 2 years of completely solid film. Like Buka, we've got years, 3 years, 4 years of seeing what this guy brought to the field. And with Matthew Golden, I just feel like there's a little bit more risk. But he's very talented. Like I said, he's a great separator, which is one of those skills that translates well to the NFL. You need that. I don't usually like those jump ball guys, that's why I'm kind of a little bit shocked that I like Ted McMillan as much as I do. I think part of that was his quarterback wasn't as great too. They didn't have anything else. So he was like double, triple covered. So even if he got away from one guy, there was already another guy coming into his zone ready to step in there. So I think that's part of it for me. We didn't get to see as many one-on-one opportunities for him to really see how great of a separator he can be. But Matthew Golden, I like him a lot. If the Broncos took him at 20, I'd really understand a lot. I would. Again, wide receiver, it's such a valuable position in today's NFL. And if you can get a guy on a rookie contract and build them up with Bo Nix, that's another key thing. Just have that guy that he knows this is the guy I'm throwing to. Big third down. Everybody, the announcers are going, oh, yep, it's going to Matthew Golden right here. And then, yep, he gets open. Broncos scheme it up. Perfect. I think he could become one of those kind of guys for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man, he beats man coverage so well. And my question is, like, does Sean Payton want a pure man coverage beater, or does he think so highly of his scheme and design that, like, I can scheme guys open? I don't need the ISO player that's like, go beat that guy. I can scheme him open with the concepts. So That was my thought when they traded Jeudy. We'll see. But either way, 3 fun mocks, 3 different players. I'm really happy we're at a point where it's not Colston Loveland every single time, who, guess what? Still a viable option for the Broncos at 20. He was before they signed Ingram. He still is if he's there, in my opinion, at least. So same with Warren, same with Genty. Free agency shouldn't have changed too much. I think the only spot that free agency maybe changed for me was safety, because you have multiple long-term commitments. But then you look at Hufanga's contract. I mean, he could be gone in a year. So, like, if you freaking love Amanda Warrior Starks and you have them rated way higher, or Barron, go for it. Go get good players. Go get good players. So appreciate everyone. Michael coming in says, great show tonight. Nick and Carl building the Broncos. Yeah, we got to wrap it up. I got here 15 minutes late, so we're cutting you a little short, guys. I'm sorry. Blame the Seattle traffic, but I got to get on dad duty here. So appreciate everyone. Make sure you're following Carl and I on Twitter. Carl is at Carl Dumler, MHH. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, we're over at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. As that ticker says there underneath, please subscribe, like, and share over on YouTube. And also have to come back around and thank all of our super chat givers today. Papa Bear, David Mickelrath, of course, David Cromelo a few times as well. Thank you so much. Michael Ronquillo. I know you're happy about Tet being there mocking the Broncos out there in Tucson. Great to see you. My number one coffee brother, Patrick Wiltsey, coming in, says, good to see you. Thank you so much. That guy keeps me alive. God, the last 14 months of parenthood brought to you, sponsored by Patrick Wiltsey and Lion Coffee. Thank you so much. Phil McLaughlin. We got Mr. Rocket as well. Appreciate you. Dennis Woods with the Hawkeye logo there. Camden as well. And of course, the boss man hanging out with us. Thank you so much. Appreciate everybody. Any final thoughts, Carl? The elevator pitch.
Yeah, no, like I said, I love that the Broncos are having more and more players mock to them. It means that they've got a really good full roster. I think I'm trying to remember. I think Dylan put out an article here about the Broncos and the power rankings. Broncos were at like 10 on a lot of them now. So people are starting to believe in them. You add another couple players through the draft here. Maybe they make an impact, get us into that top 5 kind of level. Broncos are trending in the right direction. It's great to see.
Yeah. Good spot to be. It's not only Loveland before the Joker Ingram signing, and it's not only Hampton now. It's options open. We'll see what happens there for the Broncos. And man, it's a lot of fun having a quarterback, offensive tackle, cornerback set up. Pretty good spot for the Broncos. Good spot tonight. Hanging out with you guys. Appreciate everyone. We'll see you later. We'll see you next Tuesday. Choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.